Uncharted is finally in cinemas, and Sony will be hoping to capitalise on Tom Holland's extraordinary box office run. So, we've put together the top 10 best performances of Tom Holland's career. Hey guys, it's Emily from It's Gone Viral, and thanks so much for checking out the channel. Today, we'll be looking at the top 10 best performances from the one and only Tom Holland. From his baby-faced big screen debut, all the way up to his latest movie, Uncharted. Before all that though, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and make sure you check out our latest Would You Rather video with the man himself at the end of this video. Right, let's crack on with it. Back in 2020, Chris Pratt and Tom Holland both starred in the Pixar animated movie Onward. The charming tale sees both Pratt and Holland in the roles of the Lightfoot brothers, as they embark on a quest to bring their deceased father back for one last day. In true Pixar fashion, this movie really pulls on the heartstrings and was nominated for an Academy Award, a Golden Globe and BAFTA, all for Best Animated Feature Film. Onward received plenty of acclaim from critics and currently has an impressive 88% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, with plenty of people praising Holland's voice performance in the role of Ian Lightfoot. And that's why we've included it in our list. Way back in 2012, Holland made his big screen debut as the babyface son of Naomi Watts and Ewan McGregor in the critically acclaimed drama The Impossible. Telling the story of Maria Bellon and her family's own experience in the 2004 tsunami, Holland puts in a very solid performance for his first movie, and it's crazy to think that just 4 years later, he was cast as Peter Parker in the MCU. When you watch this movie, it really makes you appreciate what a great job Holland did in launching his career, and he even picked up numerous awards for his first big screen performance. After the huge success of his work in the MCU, Holland trod the path that many actors do after being a part of a successful franchise, by taking on a much darker and grittier role in the 2021 movie Cherry. Teaming up again with the Russos, Holland plays the titular role of Cherry, an ex-army officer who suffers from PTSD and eventually ends up with a heroin addiction to help deal with his trauma. Even though Cherry wasn't particularly well received, this movie gave Tom Holland the chance to impress with his acting range and served as a nice vehicle to remind audiences he can be much more than just Spider-Man. But despite plenty of positive reviews of his performance, it's fair to say that Cherry doesn't really live up to its full potential. This is a bit of a peculiar movie, this one. On the one hand, the movie flopped at the box office, but on the other, it provided Tom Holland with another seriously impressive role in the lead up to him joining the MCU. Directed by Ron Howard, In the Heart of the Sea is a sort of prequel to the events that led up to Herman Melville's literary classic Moby Dick. With an impressive cast including Chris Hemsworth, Cillian Murphy, Brandon Gleeson and Ben Whishaw, Holland takes on the role of Thomas Nickerson, the cabin boy. And despite limited time on screen, he clearly made an impression because in the same year, he was cast as Peter Parker, and the rest, as they say, is history. Best to look at this one as a solid but important performance for his career trajectory, really. This one might raise a few eyebrows, but hear us out. When it was announced that Tom Holland would be taking on the role of Nathan Drake, there was initially something of a backlash against it. Fans of the game didn't think Holland was old enough to take on the role of Nate, which essentially led to the movie being more of an origin story rather than a play-by-play account of the popular video game. But remember, this video is about the best performances of Tom Holland's career so far, so whilst we appreciate that Uncharted isn't the best movie, it's definitely worth pointing out that he does give another good performance as Nathan Drake in this movie. Is it his best work? No. Is it his best movie? Absolutely not. But it's certainly a brave approach to the role, and we think audiences will enjoy plenty of his action-packed scenes. The movie that introduced everyone to Tom Holland's Peter Parker. Holland appears in a very fun cameo towards the end of the movie and really sets the tone for his take on everyone's favourite web-slinger. Despite only appearing for a short amount of time in Captain America Civil War, Holland's performance immediately got MCU fans excited for his stint in the Spidey suit, and it gave us a glimpse of the wonderful chemistry and relationship between Tony and Peter that would later be key to the character's development. And let's be honest, just give us any excuse to watch the battle scene at the airport again, and we gladly will. Spider-Man Far From Home is just a blast, isn't it? We see Peter, MJ and Ned take on a European road trip, fighting their urges, hormones and, oh yeah, Mysterio. Dealing with the aftermath of the blip and Tony Stark's death, Peter is somewhat lost without his mentor, and it's probably fair to say that this was the most emotional storyline that Holland had to take on in the MCU, up until No Way Home, of course. In the movie, Peter finally tells MJ about his feelings for her, and also comes to terms with the fact he has to deal with the responsibility of being Spider-Man alone. As well as the darker side of his story, there are also some excellent scenes between Holland and Jake Gyllenhaal in the role of Mysterio, culminating in the big reveal at the end of the movie that sets everything up perfectly for No Way Home. The way Holland was able to balance the heavier storylines whilst also providing plenty of classic Spider-Man moments is why Far From Home is so far up on this list. When you think of Avengers Infinity War, there's probably one scene that immediately comes to mind, and that is Tom Holland sharing the screen with Robert Downey Jr. as Peter Parker is taken by the blip. That emotional send-off really showed Tom Holland's range in the role, and arguably for the first time, as up until this point, his time as Spider-Man had never really included a huge amount of sacrifice or even threat. And that's why we think Infinity War is one of his best performances so far. I mean, at the start of the movie, he's literally wisecracking himself into space, and by the end of it, he's dealt you a massive blow and shared one of the most memorable and iconic scenes in the MCU. In his first solo outing as Peter Parker in the MCU, Holland gives us a truly excellent performance that really set the tone for his origin story. Spider-Man Homecoming still feels more like a high school comedy rather than a superhero movie, and given the amount of pressure Holland would have been under to really make Spider-Man his own, he truly shines. With No Way Home nicely rounding off Holland's own origin story as Peter Parker, when you go back and watch Homecoming, you can really see the progression of the character. He goes from a mouthy and almost carefree Spider-Man to the man who's willing to sacrifice himself and his own needs to save the world. In short, he goes from a boy to a man. And that's why we love Homecoming so much. His performance in this movie gave us a fresh, exciting and new take on Peter Parker, with Holland excelling in the role, which even Stan Lee says he was born to play. Okay, this was always going to be at number 1, wasn't it? No Way Home has become a box office phenomenon, and rightly so given the events of the film. And for anyone who hasn't seen it yet, this is your spoiler warning. But really, if you haven't seen it yet, then what have you been doing? In No Way Home, Holland puts in the best performance of his career to date, dealing with May's death and the huge sacrifice that Peter makes at the end of the film. Despite the incredible scenes with Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield returning as their own versions of Peter Parker, Holland still carries the movie, as he deals with the huge consequences of his actions and he shows off his impressive range in dealing with losing the ones he loves and finishing the movie as a lost Peter Parker, and a brand new version of Spider-Man, one that we haven't seen from him yet. And in the aftermath of No Way Home, the question on everyone's lips is, will Tom be back as Peter Parker? We asked him about his Spider-Man future, and this is what he had to say.
Just a quick one on that. If you were to never play him again, how happy would you be with how things ended in No Way Home?
I think what I've been saying is that if it is my time to step down, and let the next person step up to the plate, I would do so really proudly. You know, knowing that I've achieved everything that I wanted to achieve in this franchise. Sharing that moment with Toby and Andrew will forever be a highlight of my career. Seeing audiences react to their entrance, to May's death, to the end of the film, and that massive sacrifice that Peter Parker makes. I think one of the proudest things is that people understood that the third movie was the end of my origin story, was something that felt really rewarding, because that's something that John Watts had really, really gunned for. So if it's time for me to step down, then I will do so happily and proudly. But whether I want to do that or not, honestly, I don't know. I genuinely don't know.
Do you want to see him back as Peter Parker, or is No Way Home the perfect way to end his story? Let us know in the comments. So that's our list of the top 10 Tom Holland performances. But what are your favourites? Pop it down in the comments below. And if you're new to the channel, then make sure you subscribe and hit that bell so you never miss another video. Thanks for watching It's Gone Viral.